huh? What the hell is a disabled person like you doing here? This isn't a hospital or a rehab center, you know.
Well, I actually work here.
Seriously? Since when did we start hiring the freak show?
My name is Makoto Sugizawa. I'm 23 years old and working as a graphic designer. This time I'd like to tell you about a certain a-hole that came to work at the same company as me. Let me start by telling you a bit about myself. Until my second year of high school, I was a normal student and was attending the karate club after school. But one day when I was walking home after club activities, whoa! When I turned the corner, a bike came out of nowhere driving towards me at an incredible speed. Of course, I did my best to jump out of its way, but it was too fast and we ended up colliding. There had been some snowfall earlier that day and the roads were still frozen. I heard later from my parents that the rider had lost control of his bike because of the reckless speed that he'd been driving despite the weather warnings. To be honest, I don't remember much of what happened after I realized the bike was coming towards me. When I woke up, I was in bed in the hospital room. My parents, who were at my bedside when I woke up, began crying as soon as they realized that I had regained consciousness. At first, the thought that came to mind was that I'd been in an accident and I hadn't reacted fast enough. Were my injuries that bad? I barely managed to get that question out. My dad looked frustrated as he answered that I had lost my left arm. My left arm had been crushed by the bike and apparently it was in some pretty gruesome condition when I got back to the hospital. There was nothing the doctors could do to save it, so my parents were told that they would just have to have it amputated from the elbow down. I didn't understand. Sure, I was right-handed and wouldn't have to learn to write all over again, but that didn't make any difference. I had lost my arm. Why? It's not fair! I couldn't stop myself from panicking. My mother held me in her arms as I cried, murmuring words to soothe my despair. I wanted it all to just be a bad dream. After that, the parents of the person who caused the accident came to see me and apologize. They were very sincere and made it very clear that they honestly felt terrible for what happened to me. However, their son never came to apologize to me himself. Apparently, he had also been injured in the crash and was in the hospital too, but his injuries weren't as severe as mine, and it seemed like his recovery would be much quicker too. I couldn't help but feel anger at how unfair everything seemed. Before I knew it, I was telling them that their apology didn't make any difference, but I was so tired and so frustrated that I didn't even have the will to take back what I had said. A while after that, a prosthetic arm was attached to my elbow, and I began my rehabilitation lifestyle. I did my best to follow the prosthetist's instructions and did all the exercise, but there were still times when I could feel that my non-existent left arm was itchy or in pain. I don't have the words to describe how discomforting it was. Apparently it was called phantom pain, and he explained that it was a common symptom in people who had lost a limb. I still realized how helplessly sad I felt when I heard that. At the very least, I was able to receive compensation from my perpetrator's parents, and the money to cover the cost of my hospital bills, so I was relieved that I wasn't going to cause my own parents any financial trouble. However, I had no choice but to give up on my club activities. After I was released from the hospital, I didn't know what to live for. I was lost. I had been practicing karate since I was a kid, and I only had just realized how large of a role it played in my mental health. For some time, I couldn't accept what happened to me, and I'm embarrassed to say that I used it as an excuse to act out. I skipped school when I felt like it and stayed out all night. I was self-destructive. But my parents were patient with me and encouraged me to talk about it and get everything out of my system. I was thankful to them that I could finally sort myself out by fall of my third year. Mom, Dad, I'll go back to school. When I said that, it felt like it was the first time I had seen them smile in a long time. I started looking for another reason to try, a hobby that I could immerse myself in. That's when my homeroom teacher decided to suggest a certain club to me. He asked me if I was interested in joining the Fine Arts Club. As well as karate, I had always enjoyed drawing and painting as a hobby. I hadn't drawn anything since I lost my arm, but until then I often spent my free time doodling and sketching. My homeroom teacher was the art teacher and was also the teacher in charge of the Fine Arts Club. He had seen the illustrations that I'd given in class and told me that he invited me to the club because he thought I was very good. It was rare for a third year to apply to a club at this time of the year, but I decided to try it out for a week before making up my mind. Once I gave it a try, I realized that it was a lot of fun, and I became completely absorbed in my club activities. I started enjoying drawing a lot more than I did before I lost my arm. Like that, I had found another reason worth staying alive for. I had never properly practiced art, so I didn't have the skill or confidence to make it into an art university, but I had the grades to make it into a design school to learn more about graphic design. At that school, I learned about design, and after graduating, I went on to get a job at a small design company close to my hometown. It was a small company and our office was a single room that we were renting out in a building. But my new colleagues and the director were all good people, and they were understanding about my prosthetic arm. And now it's been 3 years since I started working there, and I'm very satisfied with the life that I've been able to build for myself. But one day, I got a message regarding a new addition to our team from one of my colleagues, Mia Nakao.
Hey, did you hear the news from the director?
Hey, what news?
Apparently someone's being transferred from the parent company to work with us, starting next week.
Someone from the parent company? No one told me about that.
I just heard today. Apparently they'll be working in the sales department.
I wonder what they're like.
I don't know a lot about them, but I hear they're around the same age as you.
Oh, really?
I hope that we'll get along.
Yeah, I hope so too. We've never had a guy around the same age as me, so I'm looking forward to meeting them.
Good for you.
The company I work at is just a child company, and the parent company isn't that far from here. But we've never had any transfers like this before. And I've never been to the parent company either. Having someone be sent to work here was unprecedented, and when the new person finally arrived,
Hey, what's up? I'm Shinichi Fukui.
from the beginning, he seemed like he lacked work ethic. He was going to work in sales, so he was wearing a suit, but his tie was loose and his shirt wasn't even tucked in. My first impression screamed that he was going to be trouble. He was the same age as me, and we both had entered the company at the same time, but I didn't think that we would get along. But I knew that we would have to be working together, so I went to say hello to him, only for him to say,
Huh? What the hell is a disabled person like you doing here? This isn't a hospital or a rehab center, you know.
well, I actually work here.
Seriously? Since when did we start hiring the freak show?
He shouted about my arm without any care for his surroundings at all. It was rare for me to be treated with such obvious discrimination, and instead of being angry, I was just shocked. It seemed like it was a lost cause to try and get along with him. After his arrival, our small company ended up being completely at his mercy. He wasn't hardworking at all and just didn't do anything that he was asked to. It wasn't that he didn't know how, he just didn't care to do his own job. No matter how many times our managers warned him, he would just pretend to listen and never change his behavior. On top of that, he seemed to have something against me because...
Hey, one arm, go out to the shop across the road and buy me my lunch.
Sorry, I've still got work to clear up.
Did you just talk back to me? Make yourself useful and buy my lunch. You can't use your disability as an excuse to slack off.
I haven't been slacking off.
Ah, forget it, you're just a waste of space.
Or so he says. Just to make it clear, having one arm doesn't affect my work at all. I think I'm pulling my own weight, all things considered, but hearing something like that does hurt my feelings, of course. Everyone in the office had already realized from day one that I was being treated like this. And one day I got a message from Nakao about Fukui.
Hey, about that Fuki guy. He's being really disrespectful to you, isn't he? He sounded like a stupid school bully when he asked you to go and buy his lunch.
It's been ages since I heard a bully like that.
I'm really sorry, Sukizawa. I tried telling him off too, but...
It's okay, there's nothing you can do if he's not willing to listen. But I wonder why he's been able to get away with all that behavior. I feel like the director has been holding back when warning him.
I thought that was weird too, so I spoke to a friend of mine that works for the parent company, and I found out Fukui is actually the son of the CEO. I couldn't believe her when I heard of it.
Seriously? Fukui's dad owns the company?
Yeah, apparently he's been in a lot of trouble since he was a kid, and I guess that hasn't changed at all since he became an adult. I guess his dad had enough with him at the parent company, so he had him sent here. What a pain.
Now everything made sense. If that was true, then it explained why the director of the child company was finding it hard to discipline Fukui for his harassment. But it was even more shocking to me that the CEO thought it was okay to force the child company to deal with his own problem child. I had heard that the CEO was a good person, but I guess those rumors were untrue, huh? So, Fukui was left to do as he pleased in the company. It was bad enough that he was causing trouble for the people in the office, but he eventually started to get complaints from our clients too. When an employee from the client company warned Fukui about doing up his suit jacket, he apparently lost his temper and moved in on him. We were lucky that that man who visited us was a forgiving man, but Fukui wouldn't even accept that he had done anything wrong.
Why the hell do I have to apologize to an old man like that? I don't deserve this!
I wouldn't be surprised if they decided to end our contract with them. You should be more thankful that they decided to forgive you, and you should be more careful with how you speak.
What? Sukizawa, you really are an annoying guy. Anyway, how about you massage my shoulders for me? Oh wait, you might hurt my shoulder since you got a prosthetic arm!
I knew that I would only be wasting my time if I took him seriously, so my only choice was to keep quiet and ignore his stupid remarks. But it wasn't all that bad. One day, I was invited by Nako to go and have dinner after work. I had some work to finish up, but Nako waited until I was done and we locked up the office before heading to the restaurant, when…
Hey, if it isn't Sugizawa and Nako, what are you doing?
Unfortunately for us, we ended up crossing paths with Fukui in the middle of the street. I thought that he had left earlier than us, but it looked like he had been drinking in the vicinity, and he wasn't alone. He was walking with some shady-looking guys who might have been his friends. I explained why Nako and I were together and tried to end the conversation quickly, but…
Hey, wait a minute, I don't care if you leave, but how about Nako comes with us?
Hey, let me go!
Fukui stopped Nako from walking away by grabbing her forcefully by the shoulder. "Stop that, you're hurting her!" Without thinking, I pulled his arm off Nako's shoulder, which only made things worse.
What the hell? Don't act all tough just because you want to show off. You're just a freak without an arm.
He wrapped his left arm around my neck and grabbed his other arm, tightening his hold. He had me in a headlock. It hurt, so of course I attempted to push him away from me, but instead he lost his balance and fell flat on the floor. When I saw him fall, his friends started cackling, and that enraged Fukui even further.
You bastard! What the hell are you doing?
Wait a minute, just calm down a second.
Fukui had put his hand into his chest pocket and pulled out a knife. I began to wonder if he was really the same age as me. He didn't listen to Nako shouting for him to stop and came towards me brandishing his weapon, but I stayed calm. I dodged his first attack before giving him a swift kick to the stomach. I had ended up using a karate technique on reflex. As a result, he fell back onto the floor and curled up around his stomach, with the contents of his stomach pouring out of his mouth. His friends could only look on in shock, gaping. I didn't want the situation to get any worse, so I took Nako by the hand and quickly led her away from the scene. But as we left…
Hey, Sugizawa! You better not forget this! I'll make you pay!
I could hear Fukui shouting threat after threat at us. Once we arrived at the restaurant, I apologized to Nako for putting her in such a dangerous situation and for scaring her.
I was really surprised. I didn't know you were that strong.
I used to be a part of a karate club in school. I didn't mean to frighten you or anything.
I'm not scared of you at all. I'm just still in awe. If anything, this might be inappropriate, but I thought you were pretty cool.
Seriously? I had the impression that women didn't like men that hurt other people, no matter what the reason.
No, it's not your fault you had to kick him.
I bet he's really pissed off with me. I just hope that he doesn't take me to court for assault.
Don't worry, if that ever happens, I'll act as your witness. I mean, he had a knife. What you did was self-defense.
Thank you, Nako. Saying that, I felt ashamed that I had let my impulses take over and hurt him like that. I was sweating from every pore. One of my arms may be a prosthetic, but an amateur with a knife was no match for me. The guys I faced in tournaments I participated in before the accident were much scarier and much stronger than Fukui. Of course, I had never used my skills like that on anyone before. Either way, I was just glad that Nako was safe. I just felt that I had gotten a bit too far in my methods. I probably didn't have to worry about the police, but I wasn't sure how Fukui's dad would react to the news. He wouldn't turn up at our office and start a fight with me, would he? I'm overthinking. I had managed to brush away all my worries, but when Monday came back around and I walked into the office…
You must be Makoto Sugizawa.
Unbelievably, the CEO of the parent company and Fukui's dad, Mr. Naoki Fukui, had actually come to the office. I could see the director of our child company panicking behind him, and Fukui, his son, was smirking beside him. I'd almost given up and accepted that I was going to be fired, and then I realized the CEO's face was familiar. Even though I had never met him or seen him before, I was trying to remember when and where I had seen him when the CEO started speaking.
I'm very sorry for the trouble my stupid son has caused you. I don't have the words to express how disappointed I am, and how ashamed I am that he made you suffer for the second time.
The CEO himself began to apologize and lowered his head before me. He even turned his head to Fukui next to him and pushed his son's head down in order to make him apologize as well. But wait, a second time? I was thinking about what he meant when I finally realized the CEO, and remembered when I had last seen him. It was when I was in the hospital after my accident. The man that stood before me was the parent of the person who had crashed into me. His son had been the one who had taken my arm away from me. In other words… What? So that means that Fukui was the man that crashed into me with his bike?
Yes, that's right.
I had to admit it was a strange coincidence that we had. I had no idea that Fukui was the guy that had run me over, and Shinichi Fukui didn't know anything about me either. Even after being discharged from the hospital, Fukui never came to see me or apologize, so it wasn't surprising that he didn't recognize me. I heard afterwards that Fukui didn't accept that the accident was his fault, and the parents felt that it would be disrespectful to force him to apologize if he wasn't going to be sincere about it. The CEO had spoken to my parents and promised that he and his son would never disturb us ever again. Because of his misplaced resentment towards me, they had never even told Fukui my name, out of fear that he might try and contact me or worse. Normally, you might think that he had no reason to resent me, but apparently Fukui had often complained that the accidents only occurred because I didn't get away fast enough, and he even got out as far as to blame me for his injuries. I was shocked to hear that idiots like that actually existed.
I really didn't know that it was you. I'm so sorry that I bullied you so much. You've got to forgive me.
Seriously? But even if it wasn't the guy you crashed into all those years ago, it still doesn't excuse your behavior. You were in the wrong.
You're absolutely right. Shinichi, no matter how many times I warned you to change your ways, you didn't. I was just wasting my time.
Fukui was almost crying as he pleaded with his father.
But Dad, I apologized, didn't I? I said sorry, so please don't kick me out.
The arrogant attitude that Fukui had last night was completely gone, and he was on his knees begging his father for forgiveness. All of a sudden, the CEO punched his own son in the face.
You idiot! It was necessary for you to apologize, but that doesn't automatically mean that you're forgiven.
No way, you've got to forgive me!
Keep your mouth shut. I don't ever want to see you ever again.
Even then, Fukui attempted to cling to his father, but in the end, he was dragged out of the office and told never to come back. After that, the CEO himself explained everything to me directly. His son Shinichi had been acting out ever since he had become an adult. And despite having managed to get his son into a job at his company, Shinichi only caused more and more trouble for the people around him. The CEO decided that he had to teach Shinichi the hard way, and thought about kicking him out of the home to make him fend for himself. However, his wife strongly opposed the idea, leaving him no choice but to send Shinichi to work in his child company. He didn't intend to leave him there for long, just long enough for him to be able to gather evidence to file for a divorce. It seems that his wife was the only one that had been coddling Shinichi ever since he was a kid, and she didn't force Shinichi to do anything that he didn't want to do. Apparently, she was just as selfish as Shinichi was, and went on shopping sprees at every chance she got. The CEO told me about how he had lost his patience with both of them. He had been consulting with a lawyer to find evidence of their misdemeanors so that he could kick both his son and wife out of his home. And the news about the altercation that we had last night had come in, and he was just finishing his preparations. Shinichi had been arguing that he'd been beaten up without any warning, but thanks to his usual behavior, his own dad didn't believe him. That's when he heard that it was me that Shinichi had been fighting, and the CEO was furious. It was a coincidence that I'd gotten into the same company, but the CEO had remembered my name. It's not an uncommon name, so he assumed that it was just someone that happened to have the same name. He told me that he was curious to find out if it was me, but he had promised my parents that he wouldn't bother us ever again. So he decided to keep his promise and didn't look any further into it. But when Shinichi told him that he had been beaten up violently by Makoto Sugizawa with a prosthetic arm, his suspicions were pretty much confirmed. After explaining everything to me, the CEO apologized once more.
I'm very sorry for making you suffer so much over and over again. I'm very ashamed of my son and his behavior toward all of you in this office. I don't know how you can ever forgive us.
It seems that he had failed to bring Shinichi up all the right way, but that didn't make him a bad person. I accepted his apology, and by the way of apology to the entire team in the child company, he promised to present us with a brand new office that was bigger and nicer than the last. In any case, I'd finally gotten my peaceful days back. Ever since that night, Nako had been inviting me to go out, and we've been having drinks on a regular basis, so it wasn't long until we started dating. As for Shinichi Fukui, he and his mother were kicked out of their home, and the CEO says that he has no idea where they've gone. But I doubt that he can make a life for himself without his father's connection and influence. Come to think of it, I caught sight of a homeless man lying on a bench in the middle of the night. Just a while ago, I have a feeling he looked a lot like Shinichi. I just hope that he learns from his mistakes and will try and straighten himself out.